Hello and welcome to a new video. Today we're gonna take a look at top 10 teams for the Retro Cup. The Retro Cup is coming back. This cup does not allow you to use Steel type, Dark types or Fairy type Pokemon, as they were not part of Generation 1 of Pokemon, so that's mainly why. Of course, if you haven't subscribed already, feel free to do so. If you don't want to, don't do it. And next one, we're gonna take a look here now at the meta already. We're going to be like a little bit faster around this one, because we don't have the official rankings for the new season. Here are some rankings that I did for the new season, where I just put in basically the stats, but they are not as weighted, for example, as the normal stats that PvPoke does themselves, so they're not as ideal. I would not expect Gligar to be as good, for example, here, because there are a lot of Ice-type Pokemon that are really strong, so I would imagine that Gligar is still going to be usable, but not as great as it shows here. And interesting thing about this one as well, the types that got added basically after Generation 1 were mainly there to balance certain types, mainly Dragon as well as Psychic type Pokemon. So those going to be the mainly strong Pokemon here, because the balancing moves, like balancing types like Fairy and Steel for Dragon and Dark as well as Steel for the Psychic types are both gone. So Psychic types are free and Dragon types are completely free as well, so that's going to be a little bit of a wild one. Here going to be the ratings from last time this was around. This is 2 seasons ago, so before Dig got buffed and before Sky Attack got nerfed. So here you're going to see some more actual rankings that would look a little bit more normal there, I guess. So Lickitung would be very high up there, which I would expect going to happen for this one as well. As well as something like Golbat, Dugong would be very decent, Frost is going to be very decent, Altaria going to be dropping a little bit down, but you have something else like Dragonair or the Dragonite, which is going to take its place. So very similar to this one. Vigoroth going to be pretty high up as well, I would imagine, especially with Rock Slide. So, moving on to the first team, we're going to have here a very simple team. We're going to have here either the Auroras in the lead or also the Lickitung. Those two are going to be very neutral, but also just going to give you some nice coverage against the current most common Ice-type Pokemon, as he has a Rock type, or also Lickitung, which just can be good against something like a Frostless, which is going to be very common. You could also argue of going something like the Regirock in the lead would work out as well. You're going to have the face-up here of the Shadow Dragonair, while we have the Shadow Dragonite in the back. You can use basically any kind of Dragon type for this position. I would recommend you maybe to have something as a face-up that's not weak against like fighting as well. So Arctibex is most likely a little bit of a trickier one to use, because if you encounter some counter user in the lead, it might be a little bit tricky for it. But here we're going to have also not the actual top 20 list, it's just top 20 list that I was looking at through and made myself. So here you're going to see a little bit of the meta that you're going to encounter as well, most likely, which I think is like very strong this time around. And you're going to see that this team is going to be very decent. There's nothing that really can completely beat you. It's going to be a little bit tricky against Dugong sometimes. Dugong can be a little bit of a trickier one. Dragonair is going to be very neutral against most of the Pokemon, but you can also argue again of going for something like the Auroras in the lead, which would help you out against both Dugong as well as the Dragonair, as you have coverage for both of them. Moving on to team number 2, we're going to have an ABC line here. We're going to have Nice type in the lead. We have the Sasop of the Credilli, and we're going to have the Lantern in the back. This team going to be very solid as well. We're going to see here right now as well the team in general. You can go for Avalanche, you can go for Triple Axel on the Frostless. It doesn't really matter, it depends on what you really want to do. Here I was just lazy and didn't want to put the Ice Unit in there, but both of them are fine. Or not Ice Unit, Triple Axel in there, because both of them are kind of okay for you. Depends on really what you want to do. Triple Axel might be a little bit better in the 2-shield scenario. Avalanche is most likely a little bit better in the 0 and 1-shield scenario, so whatever you want to go for is fine here. There is no right or wrong option. And we're going to see this team is also going to be very decent. Arctibex can be a little bit of a core breaker though, so maybe something like Dragonair's face-up going to be a little bit better as well. If you want to use the Litleo in the back here, which is also going to get a buff now with Incinerate, you might want to go for the Lickitung lead, even though this is going to give you a double weakness against against Fighting type Pokemon. I guess Fighting type Pokemon are kind of rare in this meta, because you're going to have a lot of Flying type Pokemon, you're going to have a lot of Ghost type Pokemon, you're going to have a lot of Psychic type Pokemon, so Fighting types are still viable, but for example Medicham as well is not going to be as good in this meta. There are other Fighting types that might be even a little bit better, so going to be an interesting one here as well, as we can move on to the next one. Next one going to be I Am Confusion. We're going to have just a triple Confusion team here. You can use something like Oranguru in the back as well if you want to, or in the lead, it does not really matter. Here we have 2 Psychic Fangs users, and all of them have Confusion, again as said before. There is no Steel types, there are no Dark types. The only thing that resists Confusion are other Pokemon that have psychic typing. So here you could also argue of going for Tackle on Giraffaric to have a little bit more coverage, generates energy as fast, does a little bit less damage than Confusion, but is a one-turn move which has a lot of benefits, but going to be a little bit trickier against those Rock-type Pokemon. Otherwise, you can also, yeah, just go ahead and go for something like Oranguru or something like Cresselia with the Psycho Cut would also make some sense, so definitely some options there as well. But yeah, I played this team I think last time as well. It was a very strong one. I enjoyed this one quite a bit, and I feel like this is going to be still working out pretty well. Again, Confusion does basically have nothing that resisted other than other Pokemon that are also Psychic types, so they're kind of an equal scenario there. So this team is very, very solid. Speaking of very solid, this is actually a Legend team, I think, from, FB Sticks from, like, 2 seasons ago, as far as I remember. And we're going to have here Cresselia, Zangoose, as well as Lickitung, and I feel like this team still should work out pretty well. Golbat is a little bit of an issue, maybe. The Pidgeot might be a little bit of an issue. Talonflame, you can still deal with those, though, because, like, Lickitung and Zangoose are both very neutral against basically everything in this meta other than fighting types. Those are going to be very, very strong. You could now argue to use Save-Swap of Vigoroth as well. Here we have, for example, the Regirock as well. Regirock going to be very solid in this current meta. We're going to have an alternative lead as well as the Frostless, which are going to have basically a similar effect. They're trying to have something for potential fighting types in the lead. But this team is very solid. Zangoose has a lot of play in the meta. It's going to be a fun one to use for sure. And we can move on to the next one. Let's take a look at the next team. We're going to have here the Lantern in the lead. We're going to have the Kingdra Save-Swap, and we're going to have a Dragonair in the back. I played this team as well last time around this cup was around, and I had the Altaria in the back. This team's still going to be really, really solid, especially in the current meta. I feel like it might be even a little bit better. You could even argue of going for Dragonite over Dragonair in the back, because it's going to give you coverage for the Vigoroth a little bit more there, because you can resist the counter. Vigoroth might be a little bit of a trickier one to deal with, but still there's going to be a very solid lineup here. As you're going to see as well, we're going to be able to beat nearly everything with this one. Cresselia can be a little bit of a tricky one, because you have access to both the the Grass Knot as well as the Moonblast, which is going to hit everything for super effective here, but you can still deal with it with Dragon Breath users in the 2-shield scenario. You're going to be okay there. Also, the Arctibex can be a little bit of an issue, but again, you have some Dragon types in the back. I used this team the last time around. The cool thing about Kingdra is just it's a very solid Save-Swap in the current meta, as you're going to be able to be a Dragon type that is not weak against Ice-type Pokemon, and as there are a lot of Ice-type Pokemon, you can try basically to bait them out, and then you're going to have some other Dragon in the back that does not have to face them anymore. So I really enjoyed this team the last time this cup was around. It worked out super well for me, so I feel like this is going to be a very solid one again this time around. Next team. Ice is nice. We're going to have here again a double Ice line here, which kind of tries to counter the double Dragon lines, I guess. And we're going to have a counter user in the lead here with the Deoxys defense, which is most likely a little bit better than the Medicham in this case. Deoxys defense is just not going to have the kind of weakness that you have with Medicham against like other Psychic type Pokemon. Here you're going to be neutral against, while of course the Medicham is going to take neutral damage, while he is going to be resisted damage from Confusion. So I feel like that the Deoxys defense is going to be a little bit better. Going to be a little bit faster to get to the Psycho Boost as well for it, so that's going to be a cool one. Otherwise, this team going to be very straightforward. You're going to have the Dugong as your Save-Swap, going to be able to also hit something like the Lantern with the Drill Run, which is going to be very good for it. And it just a solid lineup. Core Breaker might be a little bit of Jellicent here. Jellicent can be a little bit of a trickier one, and of course Lantern can be also a little bit tricky. But if you, I feel like here for this team, actually the Arctibex does make a little bit more sense than the Auroras in the back, allowing you to beat those Lantern a little bit easier, but you have to decide for your own. But I feel like this is going to be a very decent concept. Moving on, next one. Going to be also a very decent concept. We're going to have something here with a Vigoroth, as well as the buffed variants of either the Alone Marowak here, or also the Talonflame. Talonflame going to be, of course, a little bit better with the new buffed Incinerate plus Fly on it. Going to be a very solid pick for this meta, but it's not going to be as great as for the Open Great League, I would imagine, because they're going to be a lot more Water-type Pokemon here. They're going to be a lot more, yeah, I don't know, just in general, Dragon-type Pokemon, which is going to be a little bit tricky for the Talonflame. So I wouldn't even imagine the Talonflame going to be the best Pokemon here. Maybe even Charizard is still better, but I just want to put it in because of course it got buffed. The thing is here as well for Talonflame, Talonflame is very decent against Fairy-type Pokemon as well as Steel-type Pokemon, both of which are going to be banned, so it's going to be a trickier one for it. Vigoroth going to be a solid Save-Swap in this meta, again going to have Rock-side coverage now, which is going to help you out against especially those Ice-type Pokemon, like the Frostless, which was before a little bit of a trickier matchup. Now you're actually going to be easily able to win this matchup as well as you're going to be able to hit something like a Dugong for super effective, with, or the Charizard, or the Talonflame. So it's going to be a very interesting one here. I feel like that the Vigoroth going to have a big impact for this meta and going to be most likely on nearly every team. Next one going to be here a classic team, which I kind of like because a lot of people will not expect to see something like a fighting type Pokemon here. So Shadow Machamp might actually have some decent play. Yes, you're going to have a lot of flying type Pokemon. Yes, you're going to have something like a Golbat, Jealous in there. But you're going to be able to still hit pretty hard against all the ice types and all the normal types. And there are a lot of them in the meta right now. And you basically even win against something like a Frostus in the 2-shield scenario, just going straight cross chop, which is kind of wild. And you're just going to have great coverage in general. As a Say-Swap here, we're going to have Oranguru or the Girafarig here. Both of them being a normal and psychic typing basically leaves it with next to no weakness, because like you're weak against what, bug types, which are pretty much nowhere, as well as dark types, which are not allowed in this meta. So basically those two Pokemon are insanely free because you have like some ghost type coverage on some Pokemon like Frostus or the Lickitung. But yeah, basically both of those going to be insanely good Say-Swaps in the current meta. Also, Oranguru getting access to Trailblaze, going to make the matchup against Lantern a little bit closer. You might not be able to win it still, but it's still going to be great coverage, as well as you're going to buff your own confusion damage, which is going to be interesting. So definitely an interesting one there. Oranguru in general going to be a very cool Pokemon to use in this meta. I can't wait to try this one out. Cresselia in the back going to be very decent just in general. Like this Pokemon going to be very good as a generalist, being able to hit all those Pokemon other than like Charizard and Talonflame, which is going to be very decent, and we can move on into the next one. Next one going to be a team around Clodsire, even though I'm not too sure about Clodsire in this meta. I have to talk a little bit about this. Yeah, I gave you some alternatives over Clodsire as well if you don't want to use it. But as you can take a look here, Clodsire does not really look too good in this meta as well. Again, Clodsire is a Pokemon that's very decent against Steel-type Pokemon as well as Fairy-type Pokemon, both of which are going to be banned here. I still kind of want to put it in just because, of course, it's going to be a new Pokemon. And so I kind of wanted to try it out. But again, here it might be a little bit better to go for Talonflame again, to go for a Vigoroth, Say-Swap. But you can also use something like the Dragonite in Elite, which might work out a little bit better for you than Talonflame, even in this meta, I would imagine. And yeah, Vigoroth plus some kind of Mudboy in the back, most likely going to be a great shout for this one here. Final team for today, we're going to have an interesting one here because it's going to be played out a little bit different than the other ones prior. As said before, basically Oranguru has no real answer in the current meta. This Pokemon is going to have a great typing, has great coverage, and so what you kind of want to try to do here is just to try to play it out and try to align. I kind of want to put also the Gligar in here because, again, I don't really imagine that Gligar is going to be the best Pokemon for this meta, because there are a lot of Pokemon that have coverage like the Dragonair. You're going to have a lot of Ice-type Pokemon like Dugong and Frostus here, so it's not going to be the best Pokemon here, but it's also not going to be horrible. And so basically you kind of want to stay in this team with your lead, try to stay and then align your Pokemon later on. Talonflame plus a Dragon type is just having a great core, plus the same goes kind of for Gligar plus a Dragon type. You can go for Dragonair, you can go for Arctibax, depending really on what you want to play here, but I feel like this is going to be a great team. But yeah, let me know in the comment section. Are you going to play this cup? I guess it's going to be here for 2 weeks, so maybe just try it out. I feel like it's a cool cup to play. It was always a lot of fun back in the day, so definitely if you enjoy this one, feel free to leave a like, check out the videos on the screen, also top teams for the Great League, and I see you then. Bye bye!